Welcome back, everybody, to a Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would like to introduce Peter Anthony. He's an author, speaker, and master in professional communication. As an expert in collaboration, Peter has run workshops for thousands of people in 12 countries over 20 years. He consults to Fortune 500 companies to help them achieve better, smarter outcomes for more effective internal and external relationships. His book, Collabradabra, highlights the 6 moments that matter to maximize collaborative outcomes, one conversation at a time. Peter and I have been talking before recording right now. He's an exquisite gentleman all the way from Australia. Welcome to a Little Less Fear podcast, Peter.
G'day, Lino from Sydney, Australia.
That's incredible. 8,000 miles away. That's amazing. Welcome to
Not
a
as
Little
far
Less
when
Fear
you think it.
podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's great to be here, and I reached out to you, Lino, because I saw your podcast and listened to it, and I really love the content and the spirit of what you're doing, and I'm 100% behind it.
Thank you so much. And the reason why we connected is because you're amongst one of those spirits. So thank you so much for connecting with all of us. Peter, I'm interested in your journey. What brought you to be as collaborative and knowing so much about collaboration and amongst other topics? What brought you to where you currently are at today?
That's a great question, Lino. There's two legs of my journey. The first leg was the professional leg, and I did an economics degree. I worked in senior sales and advertising roles for 15 years in different parts of the world. And what I found was that I was being taught by great organizations like IBM and like Ogilvy Advertising. I was taught to sell. And what I found was the more I sold, the less sales took place. And I had a young family and a big mortgage to support. And I was really struggling because what happened in the early part of my career is that when I was struggling selling, people sent me to sales courses and sales programs. And I found the more I did that selling, the less it worked. And then I thought, I wonder why this doesn't work. And I remember quite clearly, I was sitting in an airport lounge in Cairo, of all places, working there. And I thought, now I know selling doesn't work. I wonder what would work. And I asked myself, when do I have the best relationships with people, whether that's personally or professionally? And I realized I have the best relationships when I'm collaborating, when I'm really interested in them. I care about them. I understand what their goals are. And we happen to have goals that are concurrent, like two streams are converging into a river. Then I thought, well, I wonder if I do the opposite of selling, whether that would work. So I started doing that. That was 11 years ago. I started like deliberately focusing on collaboration. I went back to college, did a master's in communication to understand it from an academic and technical view. And I started running workshops in this, teaching initially salespeople how to stop selling and start collaborating. Then I moved into collaborative leadership and how collaborative leaders develop more followership. Then studied the work by people like Eleanor Ostrom, who won a Nobel Prize for economics for her work on pro-social collaboration. Then I looked at James Turecki's work on the wisdom of teams and how the best teams are the ones that are diverse, well-formed, and collaborate. Then collaborative conversations, like a relationship, Lino, is essentially a conversation. And what I'd suggest to you is the quality of a relationship is the quality of the conversations that you have. Now, I
Oh,
package
I
this
love that.
together, and I thought, well, there's magic that happens when you collaborate. Uh, Magic, collaboration, collabradabra. So that was the
I love
word
that.
that I used to pull those ideas together. Uh, and that's the first part of the journey. That's the professional side of the journey, but it's leaving me out.
Yeah.
It's leaving me right. It leaving me out. Would you like to hear the second part now, or would you like to talk more about the first part?
Before we go into the second part, how do you define collaboration?
Collaboration, simply, Lino, is when two people or two or more people get together to produce a better result than they could alone. And it
Okay.
becomes it it gets on steroids when you've got a pro-social outcome. There's something about pro-sociality in terms of collaboration, and this could be a spiritual piece. It could be evolutionary biology piece. But if you've got a pro-social goal in terms of the outcome of your collaboration, the collaboration tends to work better. And I know this because I've worked on a lot of major charities and not-for-profits, like some globally recognized charities, helping them raise money for worthwhile causes. Like one cause we worked on recently was the gender disparity in eyesight. There are a couple of organizations in the world that travel to remote areas, particularly in Asia, like just removing cataracts from people's eyes, for example. And what they were finding was that the people were encouraging the boys and men to go forward and get their eyes fixed, if you like, but the girls weren't. And there was a huge gender disparity in eyesight, and I thought that's really unfair. So we ran campaigns to raise money for organisations that were interested in supporting young women. A lot of corporations have factories in Asia that employ primarily young women as their labour force. They were keen to sponsor it. The charities were keen to end the gender disparity issue. So, and I find when there's a pro-social outcome, things happen bigger and faster. Now, whether that's a spiritual piece or whether it's evolutionary biology that we as a species have evolved, us Homo sapiens have evolved through collaboration, which a lot of evolutionary biologists suggest. The reason Homo sapiens won the race was they collaborated better. They could speak and collaborate and share ideas better. I'm not sure what the cause is, but I know it's a fact.
Right
It's
now,
a
as you said
fact.
that, I got the vision of how whenever there's a bird calling another bird, or whenever all ducks migrate together, they kind of all flock together. So it
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
almost that if two or more people start communicating better with better quality, as you said, there gets to be a better result because there's a greater harmony, a greater pool, and people can actually start working together, flocking together with that same idea and giving it more life force energy.
Yes, yes. And there's a great video that was made a couple of years ago. You might have seen it, Lino. It's called Lessons from Geese. And
No, I didn't
it's
know
about
this. Oh my! Oh, I'm gonna have to check this out. Lessons from geese.
lessons from geese, which is the thought you were just sharing then, which is about
Wow.
how geese learn to fly together, right?
Yeah.
And according to people that are experts in bird flight, and I'm not one of them, uh, that they have a particularly unique way of forming a flock and flying together,
Right.
like even in great turbulence and great heights. And that is also a collaboration. I mean, if you look at nature, the way even the most successful species in the world are insects like ants and bees. And what's extraordinary about studying them is how they collaborate in their hives and nests. So you can, as I dug deeper into this, I thought, and I believe that collaboration is the essence of the evolutionary spirit. And
Wow.
what we are tapping into is something that is quite hardwired back in the amygdala.
I
It's
love
not
that.
something that and which is why when people do collaborate, the magic starts happening. And the issue I see now, not just I see, but anyone that's right-minded sees, is that Pew Research most recently suggested that we've never been more polarized.
Hmm.
This was American research, and it was a longitudinal study of how people, or how and when and under what conditions people change their minds or how they feel about something. And they found that we've never been more polarized. And the Pew researchers were suggesting that that could be because of social media
Social media.
algorithms, that it feeds up more of what you watch already. Like it reinforces existing stereotypes and existing prejudices.
Right.
Like if I really like red, all I'm going to get is videos about red,
Right.
and blue is the enemy, right?
Sure.
Blue are the bad guys, red are the good guys. It's quite destructive. It's because it's anti-collaborative, and that's my uneducated view about uh, why we're more polarized. And what I'd suggest to your listeners is that whatever issue you are likely to be facing, whether it's a personal issue or it's a business issue, it's likely more collaboration is going to help you find the tools to resolve that. Whether that's collaborating with yourself or collaborating with a romantic partner. I mean, John Gottman's done some great work at Washington State University about romantic relationships being collaborative conversations. Whether you're running a team, whether you're leading a company, whether you're developing a culture, or whether you're in a sales role, you'll find that there will be a collaborative solution
Hmm.
to the problem that you're facing.
Peter, so if the in a nutshell, if the definition of collaboration is one or two or more people together to get a better result than just one person, how does one get a better result collaborating with themselves?
That's a great question. That's a great question, and this is the second part of the second part of my
All right, let's
of,
do
of
it.
my of my journey. The second part was that I was this corporate warrior. I was running workshops in 12 countries, and I had the big house, had the car, had like all the so-called successful things. And I was a big Tony Robbins fan. I'm sure we've all heard of Tony Robbins, the motivational guru, Walking on
Yes.
Fire. I'd been to Your Date with Destiny. I'd been to Unleash the Power Within twice. I mean, I was a real. In the old days, I had his 20 CDs stacked in my car, and they would just play on rotation as I drove from meeting to meeting. I was like a robot. And then three things happened. 5 years ago, three things happened at the same time, with three blessings in one cup. One was I got diagnosed with prostate and gastrointestinal cancer. The second was that my daughter, who was living with her mother at the time, came to live with me, because part of the wreckage from my corporate warriorship was a broken marriage. She came to live with me full time, and she was in the lowest space you could possibly imagine. She had stopped going to school. She was smoking a packet of cigarettes a day. She was taking drugs. She was with a very toxic group of people, of friends, and she'd been seriously assaulted by a boy, and she arrived on my doorstep. So I had a broken long-term relationship, a recent diagnosis with cancer. I'm living alone in my apartment in Manly, and my daughter calls me one night as I'm going for a walk along the beach. She says, "Dad, can I come and live with you?" And the next morning she was there. So I had I had a whole
Wow.
package,
Yeah, that's a
if you
lot.
like.
Yeah,
It's
that is
yeah,
a whole package. All right.
and everyone gets. I know you've had a hugely challenging journey, Lino, and I respect that,
Thank
and
you.
we all have. I don't think
Oh
anyone's
yes.
journey is harder or easier than anyone else's.
Exactly.
Uh, but but when you get to know people well enough, you understand there's some deep water underneath that calm surface. So that's the second part. And I thought my initial reaction to that was, well, I'll just take massive action, like Tony Robbins says. You never leave the side of a decision without taking massive action. It's all about physical things. It's all about moving differently and saying yes and walking through fire. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work. it, when you've got when you're talking about anxiety and stress,
Mm-hmm.
like I was with myself and my daughter, that doesn't work. I know it doesn't work because I tried it. And I thought, well, I've spent the last 11 or 12 years studying collaboration and all these different corporate perspectives. I wonder whether I can collaborate with myself.
What
I,
an
I want and
amazing
wonder whether I
question to
can.
ask yourself.
Yeah, I love asking myself questions like this, because the bizarre thing, Lino, is that when you ask your subconscious questions, it usually gives you the answers, right?
How did that answer
But
come to you?
too many of us think consciously, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, in my experience, anxiety is not a thought; it's a feeling, right? So it's very hard to think your way out of a feeling problem, right?
Yeah.
You can try it and it won't work. I tried it and it doesn't work,
To think your
right?
way out of a feeling problem will not work, and that makes sense. So what does work?
Uh, what does work? What does work is a couple of things. This is what Belle and I both learned in our own ways. What we found works, and this was, I'll talk about Belle's journey first, because
Sure.
ours was similar but different. What she was struggling with was that she didn't feel like she was enough, right? She felt like she wasn't beautiful enough, she wasn't skinny enough, she wasn't smart enough, she wasn't lovable enough. Her self-esteem wasn't a zero; it was like in the negatives, and she was attempting to she was comparing herself and attempting to become someone that she wasn't. And then one night we were having dinner together after many of our long discussions, and she said, "So this just boils down to me being enough." And we talked about that at length, and we said we thought, well, part of the problem with this anxiety feeling is that I'm setting my goal to be, my goal is being more than who I am, or I'm thinking I'm less than who I am, and both of them are toxic for different reasons. She was thinking more less than, I was thinking more than, and what we realized together, what she realized was that she was enough, and that's okay. And we began meditating on that. We began we started with I am, and then we moved into I am enough. I'm enough. I'm not like I'm just enough. I'm most enough. And that feeling, if you like, that she began to develop in herself, that really tiny little step, was the beginning of her turning her life around. Just realizing that, like accepting that, not thinking about, just accepting it, like it's thinking of her whole self. And we had this meditation where we imagined this little, and we nicknamed it Nuff, N-U-F-F, like you're enough. It was a funny thing. It wasn't like you are enough, grammatically correct. It's like you're enough, right? Mm-hmm. And we imagined this little Nuff sitting in our heart, that we're enough, and we imagined it just rising up through us and just coming out of us, like almost like sunshine, like we're enough, just like this, as a meditation, and it worked. We're talking about a long process here. This wasn't like one morning everything just turned around like they do in all the Tony Robbins workshops. Sure. You don't just take massive action and things change like that. And I believe if you think that, it's toxic. Because when the massive change doesn't happen, you think even worse you did in the first place. I got this problem, I take the massive action, or I can't take the massive action, therefore I'm a loser, or I've taken the massive action and it hasn't worked. Right. So it often will lead you into a more destructive place, in my view, because it did with me. Mm-hmm. It did with me. That was her journey. That was, and that became a school project for her, where she had to do it, like start a business as part of a school project. And now she's like a Greta Thunberg of anxiety. She's on a mission to send that message to the world. Right.
What an incredible mission that is, Peter.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary. I mean, I remember when she started the business, and she just said, "Oh, I just want to make." I'll never forget this. This is what how misguided I was, because she said, "Dad, what I want to do is I want to spread this message. I want to make a T-shirt just with Nuff written on it, and people are going to buy it." I'm thinking, who's going to buy that? Right? I'm thinking this very practical male. Who's going to buy that? Right? And she said, "No, Dad." And I was the angel investor. We got them printed. We had them in the garage, and and we bought we bought 500 T-shirts. Right?
Yeah.
We had 2 different colors and 5 sizes. Right? And I'm thinking, I'm going to have all these T-shirts, this garage forever. I'm never going to get rid of all these T-shirts. And she said, Dad, she said, you're an oldie. You're on Facebook. I don't like Facebook. Just put a Facebook post up and see what happens. And sure enough, I put the Facebook post up to here's you're enough to here's the story of Belle and I, and bing, 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 like those go bing, 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 like this. They're all gone in one day, right? All sold. Then she
That's
said, Dad, we
I
need to
love it.
deliver all these. So we had to deliver all these. I'm thinking, oh, great, but there was part of her journey, right? So I can't say no.
Right.
So, and she said, I want to personally wrap and sign them all. I thought, oh, great. So we've got these pictures of the dining room table full of these packages with personal notes from Belle, and us driving all around with the sat nav on, trying to find out all these addresses because they're all on the northern beaches of Sydney where we lived. And bizarrely enough, they're all mothers, they're all mums buying them for themselves or for their kids. Just to start that conversation, when we talk about conversations, Lena, just to start the conversation, like about being enough, not whether you're enough or not, but just a reminder. And I thought, wow, she's cracked. This is genius. This is really clever.
Super
And she
clever.
she tapped into something that I wasn't. It's almost speaking a different language.
Right.
All right, and she can speak that language and she taught me about that.
And so she taught you a different way to collaborate with yourself.
Yes. Well, she was collaborating with herself, and meanwhile, I was I was learning something similar uh, from her and also from the cancer journey, right? Because what I realized was that for my anxiety, it was because I was separate from myself, right? Which I guess is a different. And by the way, I'm not a clinical psychiatrist. This is not medical advice. This is just my personal my
Yes.
personal experience. And what I realized was that I was like living different personas, if you like. I was a young, I was an introverted boy that was taught to, if you get a feeling, push it down. I was taught very toxic masculinity as a child by a very well-meaning, lovely dad that thought that was how the best way to love me was to teach me that, and he taught me really well. So I was pushing feelings down, and I was pretending to be an extrovert because I was a really introverted kid.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was introverted and I was really, I had really low self-esteem, wasn't allowed to feel anything. I studied hard, and because I studied hard, I did really well at what I did because everything I looked at, I thought I'm not good enough to be here. So I just studied and studied and studied. Did well in high school, did great in university. Whatever job I had, I worked harder than anybody. I outworked everybody, right? And I became successful at a very young age because I was outworking people, and because I was introverted, I had a better sense of people than extroverts do often.
Mm-hmm.
And this persona developed of this Peter Anthony, like global consultant, and it paid really well. It paid really well, Lena. And I was being like financially compensated for having this persona, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I was the reason that the cancer turned up in my body was it was a message from the universe to get back on track before it's too late.
How did you realize that that was a message? And how did you also realize? I know this is a loaded question, asking two questions in one sentence, but I guess as you're saying this, I'm just wondering. So the first thing that you mentioned before you told the story about how you were excelling in school and stuff is that anxiety separation from self. And then you went on to do well in school and become financially successful in the corporate world. But at what point did you realize that this persona that you had developed was not your true self? When did you realize that it was the anxiety taking over and separating you from who you really are inside?
Uh,
Was it the
it
cancer?
began
Was it
when my,
actually going through the
yeah,
illness?
it began when my marriage dissolved. It began then, and my ex-wife used a beautiful line on me that I still love. I still love this line. She said, Peter, you're all surface, and underneath that surface there's just more surface.
Ooh.
I laugh now. When she said it, it really hurt me. Uh,
Oh my
but
goodness.
that sort of dug in because I think it was, I don't think, I know it was the truth
Mm-hmm.
because I'd become this like extroverted global consultant. I was playing a role, and the more I played it, the more I got rewarded, and it wasn't me. And I realized that through a lot of pain and a lot of uh, this wasn't again like a wow. One morning I woke up and bingo.
Right.
I reflected very deeply. I meditated very deeply and reflected very deeply, and I realized that I wasn't the person. I wasn't me. If that makes any sense.
So when you were
I was
meditating
separate.
deeply, Peter, when you started to meditate deeply, and I understand that this does not happen overnight, I can imagine it took many times. What were you meditating on? Were you asking questions? Were you receiving images or answers? And how did that start to actually unfold for you?
Yeah. Well, the way it unfolded was that I use a Buddhist technique where I take what I call or what they call an observer's perspective,
Okay.
and I was imagining I was observing me and observing my life, and I was attempting to access what Buddhists call Buddha nature. I was attempting to access that and uh, attempting to view myself, uh, view this overextended persona, if you like, to use psych terms, view that persona, and I did that regularly, and I went on a cancer retreat run by someone who had reversed quite significant cancer out of their body, primarily by meditation, and I learned more of it from him, and a vegan lifestyle and many other things to help address the cancer. And I just realized that the reason I was feeling so physically debilitated was because I was disconnected from myself. To use that collaboration word, I wasn't collaborating with myself. I wasn't being true to who I was, and that was happening concurrently to the Bell journey, which sort of put it on steroids. So I thought, wow, I wonder whether that's true of me too. I wonder whether that's. I like asking myself questions, particularly before I meditate, because I often get the answers,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the answers are.
Oh yeah, that's definitely where
It's
the
it's
answers
where the
are.
answers are, and sometimes you don't like to hear the answers.
Right.
And it was very emotionally charged for me, Lino, because I'd realised that I'd hurt a lot of people, and I wasn't the awesome human being I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't measure human beings by the big how big their house is or how nice the car is they drive, which was my criteria.
Right. At the time,
um,
yeah.
and it all like everything just then welled up. I mean, I was hugely like I suddenly got emotional, but I hadn't had emotions for 30 years. I had emotions, but I never expressed them. So I had to regulate that or find a way of balancing that. And I realized then that anxiety is a feeling. You're feeling anxious because you're thinking uh, you're thinking in a way that's disconnected from who you are.
That's really
Uh,
impactful. That's a powerful realization that you had right there.
uh, and that's what I realized. And it wasn't a nice journey, Lena. It was extremely unpleasant.
I can only imagine.
And I believe part of the reason, apart from obviously surgical intervention, which I did take, some of my friends I went away on this retreat with refused the surgery and just wanted to do it purely metaphysically, if you like. I wanted to do both because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't believe like Ian Gawler believes you can reverse the cancer out of your body just purely through meditation. I did not believe that, right? He does, and he did. He had a leg amputated and had a tumor the size of a fist coming out of his chest,
My goodness.
right? And he puts lifestyle, like eating lifestyle and meditation, as the reason he reversed the cancer out of his body. I didn't have his level of faith,
Mm-hmm.
if you like, but he was my teacher, right? On this journey, and it's interesting when you get on the right journey, the right teachers turn up.
Oh yeah, totally,
Like
absolutely.
if you want to learn piano, a piano teacher will turn up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Right. The
So
opportunities will arise right for you because
yeah,
it's in
they'll
your
turn
energy
up.
field. Yeah.
Yeah, your energy attracts the teachers and attracts the fellow travelers on the road, right?
Yeah.
So it brings them out, and it's a much better place to be. It's
Absolutely.
a much better place to be. I mean, for Belle, I mean, her life. She is now in a long-term committed relationship with a lovely engineering student. She's about to transfer into a law degree. She's heading off to Europe in June with a partner for a trip around Italy and France. Uh, and she looks better. She feels better. She's accepting herself. She's now 20 and she's growing into a beautiful young woman, which is huge. I'm so proud of her for having done that. And for me, I still do my corporate work. I still do that, but it's changed nature now. I do a lot more one-on-one coaching, and people have also asked me to like run workshops on this to teach them what I did. Right. Initially, I was really reluctant because I thought, who am I to teach this?
Uh-huh.
You've got like a clinical psychology degree, right? Who am I to be talking to you about this? This is just my personal experience. But people find it worthwhile. People find because, and what I find is that uh, we're all on a similar journey, right? It's different parts of the world. I mean, I'll often I'll run virtual workshops, and there'll be 8 people in the virtual workshop from all over the world, and they're all telling the same story. And I know, and it's bizarre because before the workshop begins, I know what's going to happen. Not because I'm such a genius, but because if I tap into the right wavelength,
Right.
these stories will come out. They're very similar, very similar, very similar. Which
And
is
also
why
you
I
being
reached out to you. So you
thank you,
go.
Peter. I appreciate that. I remember when you reached out to me. It was months ago, and now here we are. It's
Yeah, yeah,
incredible.
yeah. Because I saw your podcast and I thought Lito's the sort of guy I'd like to talk to because I think we have a good conversation because he's not afraid of the deep water.
No, not at all. I'm not afraid.
Yeah, not afraid of the deep water. It's bizarre. A lot of I live in Manly in Sydney. If anyone knows Sydney, it's on what we call the Northern Beaches. And I was born here and I still live here. And we do ocean swimming most mornings. Like we jump into the Manly surf, and we swim about 2 kilometers to like a
Wow.
sheltered beach called Shelley Beach and back again. It's a beautiful way, like dawn, beautiful way to start the day. Like you meditate, then swim in the ocean. It's gorgeous. And the really interesting thing is the best water to swim in is the deep water. The deeper it is, and there's a swell in it, it's got a different sort of color, and you feel like something's changing when you're in that deep water. Right?
Oh yeah.
It's
I used to go
a
swimming.
great.
I used to go to the beaches a lot in my 20s, and I enjoyed it. The beaches are just not that safe and clean out here in California.
No, they're not. I've been to California, and it's not that safe and clean. It's we have spent some time over the past 30 years cleaning up our beaches. We used to have a lot of like sewage outlets and things very close to beaches, which was toxic and just disgusting. But that's all now been cleaned up, which is great. So I'm very grateful for having that ocean so close. Plus, there's something about being in the ocean that just I don't know, just changes your physiology.
It
I
really
mean, for
does.
some people it's mountains, some people it's snow. I think being in like some sort of real nature, I think that
Hmm.
that's also part of what's necessary. It helps.
I absolutely agree with you. I miss the ocean. I love the ocean. There's just, I mean, first of all, the water is conscious. It's alive. And then when you're sitting with that much body of water, you're actually one with the earth at that moment, so deep into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
earth, and it's very grounding when you do that.
it is, and it's resonating with you on a more metaphysical level. It's very hard that it's not like I don't really understand it. Just like I don't understand why the lights come on when you flick the switch. I don't get it. I don't need to get it. I just know it works.
Right?
I don't need to understand every. I'm like a scientist, need to every step and do the bench work on it. No, no, not at all, not at all. So that was our journeys together, if you like. And now I'm also in a long term committed relationship, and the woman I met and the relationship we have would not have been possible unless I'd gone through what I went through. And I'm very grateful that I've got the opportunity to have her in my life. I look at her and I think, wow, this is the cream on the cake.
I totally agree with you, Peter. What's crazy is I was single for 8.5 years, and now I'm in a
Wow.
relationship that I first of all, I mean, I it took all of the suffering and all of the spirituality and all of the Buddhism and all the alignment, all the meditation for me to get to the relationship that I'm in now. And I feel
Yeah,
that we're equal energies. And that's why I'm really
yeah,
grateful to be where I'm at now. I mean, even though it took me 8.5 years, but like you, it took you to go through what you went through to find your match and
yeah,
into this amazing relationship that you now have. But Peter, I'm
yeah.
still wondering. This question is still brewing in my head. When did you actually start to see yourself? Like, I know that it's been the last 5 years, but did you ever have this aha moment where you're like, this is who I am. This is the energy I need to go. This is who I need to be. And this is the wave I need to ride.
Yes, I remember it. I remember it very vividly. It took maybe uh, 2 or 3 months, to be frank, of what I call hardcore meditating, which is like no distractions, no music, no guidance, just like hardcore. And I it's a dawn. I like to meditate as the sun's rising. So I imagine that the sun rising to be like part of that rising up in you, which I like to reflect on. And the first time I mentioned, which was when I realized I wasn't being who I was, and that was the sad, like unhappy part, if you like, the
Hmm.
uh, extremely distressing when I was reflecting on the damage I'd caused and the pain I'd caused, and
Hmm.
how I was being very disingenuous. And then I realized who I was. Right.
Hmm.
I realized I was this little guy with a big heart that just wanted to love people. Right. That's who I was. And I thought, well, if that's who I am, how can I? And I talked to that little guy. This might sound like I'm insane, but
Not at all.
I probably am. But I talked to that little guy. I talked to him because and when I talked to him, he was really afraid. He was really scared because he had a violent dad. My dad was loving. Don't get me wrong. He loved me, but he thought the way to love me was to be violent. That was part of his psychosis, if you like.
Right.
It took me a long time to understand that and mend my relationship with him. But I realized I was that little guy. I spoke to him for a couple of weeks. And I said the same thing to him. I gave him that same message. You're enough. It's okay. You're enough. You're enough. You can, you're enough. You don't need to be more talkative or more outgoing or more anything. You're enough just how you are. And then I felt like a sense of peace. Like I just felt like at peace with him and at peace with the world. Because what I believe is that all this shit that I was going through was me not looking after him. Right. That
Right.
that was that was in my, that sounds insane, uh, but
But that's
I
what was
felt
continuing in your mind.
that was continue, and it was still there, but I was pushing him down. I was pushing everything down, right? So when I opened up the gate, everything just flooded out, and then he flooded out, and I saw him there. Just this fat little kid. I've got a photo of myself at that age, this fat little kid with a big cat in his lap, smiling into a camera. I was about probably 6 or 7. And I thought, you're okay, mate. You're enough. You're okay. And I just felt like I put my arm around him and said, I've got you. I've got you. It's okay. Right. I've got you. It's like a really weird relationship to have. And I think of him all the time because I feel like he's more in me now. Like I'm accepting and I care about him more. And I thought, well, if that's the case, I wonder whether, uh, like you're learning, I like to ask myself questions when I meditate. And I thought, well, I wonder whether there's other people that need to get that level of connection or that would like to learn about my journey in doing that and potentially some ideas about how they could do something similar. I thought, I just wonder. So I started talking to people about it, along with Belle's journey of her anxiety piece. And there was sort of like two streams that did converge, but they were similar but different, if you like, different stories, but similar sort of outcomes, if you like. And I started talking to people. I mean, I got invited to like storytelling nights that people run, and I started telling the story, and I got invited back more. And then people said, we'd like you to like teach people how to do this. I thought, who am I to teach this? I'm not a psychologist or a psych or, and I felt a bit. I thought, maybe, but then I got such positive response, Lino, that I thought, That's the calling. I'm talking to that little guy saying, hey, like, it's okay, you're enough. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
I'm helping him, helping adult versions of him reconnect with themselves. It's you can, and like I mentioned earlier, uh, what I find when you're anxious and stressed, not so much stress, because I believe stress is more how you're thinking. I believe anxiety is more how you're feeling. That's just my experience of it. When the anxiety turns up, it's more how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually a signal that you're disconnected with yourself. To use my phrase, you're not getting the magic of collaborating with yourself. In my case, myself was that little guy, that little introverted guy,
Uh-huh.
right? That was him, right? And I want to love him, and care for him. And the more I care about him and care for him, make him feel like he's enough, the better I feel, because he's me.
Yeah.
It's really weird. This probably sounds crazy, but
Not at all.
this guy's
Actually,
great.
Peter, one of the questions that I ask my guests are if you can go into any timeline in your past when you had a dark day or you were struggling, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself? And you already answered that without me even asking you.
Yeah. You're enough. It's okay. I've got you. It depends. It depends on. I guess it depends on who's talking. Like, is it him talking or me talking? Because I like listening to him as well.
And what kind
Right?
of messages do you get from him?
He's scared.
He's all
He's
good.
scared.
He's
No,
scared.
he's afraid.
Oh, he's
He's
afraid.
scared. He's afraid. He's afraid. He's scared. Yeah, he's scared.
What do
So
you tell
he,
him when he's scared?
I tell him, I tell him two things. I tell him how I feel about him and how I suggest he feels about himself. Like what I tell him from me, like the older version of him, is that I've got you. I've got you.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what happens, I've got you. It's all right. I've got you. I love you. I love you, mate. I've got you. Right. That's how I talk to him. Uh, and what I suggest he thinks about is that you're enough. It's going to be okay. It's going to
Peter,
be
when you
okay.
do this,
You're
when
enough.
you go back and you talk to your younger self and you love that younger self, do you feel any shift in your energy after that?
Oh, hugely, hugely. I find it really challenging, Lena, because particularly initially it was so emotional, and and because I was a guy that always pushed feelings down, that's what I was taught, a very toxic way of thinking. When they came out, I couldn't regulate them. I couldn't regulate my emotions when I was talking to him or having those conversations with
Meaning
him.
because you were
I,
crying
I
a lot or you were just, your
crying a
heart rate
lot,
was
and I
up?
couldn't stop. Well, it's a combination of it's bizarre emotion. I don't like words to describe emotions anyway, because they don't really capture it. No word I know can capture the emotions that you feel. But to approximate it, it was a combination of really loving this guy, right? This little guy, really caring about him and being really concerned about him at the same time, because I knew what was going to happen to him because I
Mm-hmm.
was him, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. So being
but
compassionate at the same time.
yeah, compassion, but you also know the future. You know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I know the end of the story because I am the end of the story, right?
Right.
So I know it's going to be okay. So I can say that honestly, because I don't like being dishonest with people. Right? It's in the old days of selling. That was what you got paid to do. If you could lie really well, you got paid a lot of money. Right, right. It's a direct. It's like like coin operated. They put the coin in, and a big fib comes out. It's bizarre. Yeah, so yeah, initially I'd even like watch something on Netflix, Lena. Like I'd watch a sad episode of Ozark. One of my favorite characters would die. I would just burst into tears. I couldn't stop crying. I thought, this is what's going on. What is going on?
Hey, it
Because I
happens to
couldn't.
me. Happened to me many
Yeah,
times.
yeah, I can't. But for me, I'd never been a guy that. For me, I was the male that didn't show feeling because that wasn't male, right?
Right.
I'm saying that's toxic
That is
for you
toxic.
and anyone around you. But when you suddenly let it out, you can't let it out bit by bit. It just gushes out.
It really does.
And and the emotion from the past does, and your parents' relationships and kids and friendships and romantic relations, everything just sort of spills out in one big tidal wave. Yeah. So, and that happens. It takes quite a while to find a way of not pushing it down, but just regulating it.
Oh yeah.
Just to get some regulation so you can live in the normal world.
Yes, I can understand that.
Yeah, yeah. But it's been a really, really bizarre journey, Lena, both with my daughter and with me. It's been a really, really bizarre journey. It's been, and I would never have thought I would be having this sort of conversation with someone like you now.
Just 5 years ago, huh?
No, even 5 years ago. No, no, no. You'd have to be a CEO or a sales director or like running a big company or for me to talk to you. Otherwise, I was coin operated, right?
So
Put the
basically,
coin in.
finding who you truly are, your inner light, has allowed you to collaborate with an incredible amount of people you would have never even imagined.
Exactly, and it begins with yourself. It begins with collaborating with yourself. Um, I mean, Carl, I think Jung called this the hero's journey, and he's like the inner self. There's like a hero that beckons you on a call to adventure, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to work out whose adventure you're on. Is it your dad's adventure, your mother's adventure, your
Mm-hmm.
father's adventure? Is it the boss's adventure? Is it the company's adventure? Like whose adventure are you on? And the more separate you get from who you are, and the more someone else's adventure that you're living, the more anxious and unhappy you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a signal. But what I believe is the universe is giving you a signal that you're off track. And the more off
Exactly.
track you are, the bigger the signal gets,
Oh yeah.
right?
Until it's just so loud and unbearable that you have to sit down and listen.
You have to sit down, and the longer it takes you to listen, the worse the lesson's going to be because you're further off track you're likely to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I mean, ultimately, Lena, we all want to be happy, right? I mean, happiness is the end point of every, like the cars, the houses, the relationships, the jobs, the podcasts. And if you look at the best, like I do, I read the positive psychology research, and the number one marker for self-reported happiness is quality of relationships, right?
Yes.
Number one marker, not money, not cars, not health, not like weight loss, not any of those things. It's relationships. You think, well, okay, the quality of my life is the quality of my relationships, and it starts with me.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
Yeah,
The
it
quality
starts
of my
it starts with
life
me.
is the quality of my
Quality
relationships,
of
and
my
it starts with me.
relationships. It starts with me. Yeah.
So, geez, you have a book,
I have a book, and it's not on what I just talked about.
right?
I'm writing that because I wrote a book on the business of collaboration. It's called Collabradabra: The Magic of Collaborative Conversations,
Uh huh.
which is it's a business book, which is the first half of the story that we talked about today. The second half, I've been asked and I've reluctantly accepted to write a book about this story, right? Because I've only just sort of understood it intellectually because it was all an emotion for a year. It was all emotional. It's hard to write an emotion down. So uh, I'm I'm now doing that. I'm about 25,000 words. My publisher wants 50,000 words, which is a lot.
That is a
I'm
lot.
up about I'm about halfway through. But what I am doing is I just run virtual workshops on this with people that would like to learn more. And what I love is that I hear their stories, and then I say, okay, given that, here's an approach you might want to take, or here's an approach that worked for me. Not clinically backed. I'm not a psych. I'm not a psychologist. He's just a regular guy that went through a hugely life shifting experience, and with anxiety and with stress, I was disassociated with myself. Here's how. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work, and here's how you could potentially apply it too. Because I like that as a gift back to the universe, right? Because as you know, Lena, when you work for the universe works for you, right?
The universe wants to work for you too.
The universe wants to work for you, but it wants you to turn up and and make your contribution too. You've got to be an active participant in the universe. You can't
Yes.
sit back, wait for the universe to give you all these gifts. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. We're all giving the gifts to each. It's like Christmas time. We all give gifts to each other. Don't just sit back and get all the gifts coming to you, right?
That's so true. Yeah.
And
That's
a
so
lot of the
true. Give and
pleasure at
receive.
Christmas, well, my biggest pleasure is actually thinking about gifts, buying them, wrapping them, and watching the person's face when I give it to them.
Oh, I love that
I
feeling.
like that more than getting the gifts.
Yeah.
Much more, right? Much more. So I'm thinking, I want to give this gift, and what I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it to get the gifts back. I'm doing it because I know that's how the universe works best for me, and I'm not quite sure how it works, where the strings and whistles and wires and switches are, but I
Yeah.
know it works. I know it works. I have confidence that that's the case, and the good guys usually win in the end.
Oh yeah, the good guys always win.
Yeah. What I say about stories, Lino, that you talked about stories earlier. They say it's always happy in the end, and if it's not happy, it's not the end.
That's true.
So
You know,
it's
I heard this quote
something like that.
once, actually. I want to see, and it just came to my head right when you said that. I was meditating on YouTube. Every morning I meditate and I'll do like a chakra meditation alignment, and I'll randomly put it on YouTube and just whatever pops up. And this voice came on, this like meditative, spiritual voice came on, and he said, success is not final and failure is not fatal. And he said it like 4 times, and that stayed in my head for a while. And right when you said that right now, I thought that too. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? Success is not final, and failure is not fatal.
I agree with both. Success is not final. I think success is ongoing, because what happens, and we can echo this or arc this back to stress and anxiety. What happens as you become more successful in whatever you do? You're an athlete and you're a fast runner. So you've got a 14-year-old woman that's really fast, and she's going to be promoted up into more and more competitive athletic meets and have faster runners to go against, and bigger pressure, and like national titles, state titles, Olympic medal, and like so. As you get more successful, the challenges get bigger. So
Right.
what I'm suggesting is you learn how to deal with the anxiety that's going to come with that come with those challenges, and accept
So
the
true.
full manifestation of who you are, whatever that might be. So I don't believe success is final. I don't believe failure is fatal either. I think failure is necessary, because it's like
Yes.
uh, it's like bumping around in a room that's dark, and you don't know where the walls are, right?
Right.
You work out where the walls are. You work out where they are, and that's okay. It's okay to fail. I think there's a very famous quote on that from Thomas Edison, like who obviously invented the light bulb. And a journalist asked him, you'd have heard of this story. A journalist asked him about, because he interviewed him before he invented the light bulb, and he'd had something like 9,000 attempts to invent this light bulb. And he
Yeah,
said,
I remember I read something about that.
don't you get discouraged? He said, no, because every wrong attempt discarded as I'm closer to the solution. I obviously got the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's yeah. So
And
I
that's why
wouldn't get.
failure is necessary.
Yeah, that's why failure is necessary. And if you're failing, it means you're action orientated. You're taking more action. And what I found, and this is one thing where I found there's a gender disparity in anxiety
Hmm.
between the way Belle experienced it and how I experienced it. And this is well documented, not just my opinion. What we learned by reading a lot about this is that when women are feeling anxious, they tend to withdraw more and take less action and ruminate more, think more.
Right.
Whereas what men tend to do is take action. They tend to do something. Like
Yeah.
they'll tend to like drink more alcohol, or get into a fight,
Hmm.
or drive a car too fast, or like they'll do something action orientated that can be quite destructive. Whereas women tend to like ruminate more and go more internal. I
Right.
think the answer is somewhere in the middle. It's not taking massive action like Tony Robbins would recommend,
Right.
but it's understanding it's how you're feeling. Do something about feeling that, like what that is a signal about why you're feeling this way. There's going to be a reason that feeling is happening, and then think about how you're thinking. But they're two separate pieces. They're two separate like parts, if you like. And often I find the feeling part will dominate the thinking part.
Peter, what
Yeah.
an incredible interview you have been. Thanks so much for being a little less for your podcast. Where can our
Pleasure.
viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your book,
Uh,
Collabradabra?
you can find the Collabradabra. Just type in Collabradabra. It rhymes with abracadabra.
Yeah, that's why I love saying it.
It's abracadabra, Collabradabra, and you can say it really well. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. Or you can find me. You can find me online, Peter Anthony Consulting. That's all the business part.
Mhm.
What I'm in the middle of doing, literally in the middle of doing, is developing this approach. If people want to learn more about attending like a collaborate with yourself workshop, I'll send you a link.
Yeah, that sounds
And
amazing.
they might want to think about participating in that and just join a group of people that want to like go into this in a bit more depth for them personally. Yeah, that's the personal part. Then there's a business part, which is separate. Does that make sense, Lena?
It does make sense, Peter. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
your incredible wisdom. Anxiety is separation from self. I also want to check out the lessons from the geese on YouTube. I love you talk. Failure is necessary.
I,
What's that?
I watch some bizarre stuff, Lena. I watch stuff on geese. There's a great guy in Canada called Ant Canada that runs a YouTube channel on ants. And he's got like 7 million subscribers from around the world. I love watching this guy with his ants. I love watching that stuff. It just opens up your mind.
It does open up your
It's
mind.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I love the collaboration that you and I did today. Thank you so much, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Geez, it's really been a blessing. I feel like there's something else I was gonna ask you, and I just can't remember right now. To think yourself out of a feeling problem. It was something to do about you're saying that you cannot think yourself out of a feeling problem because that doesn't work. So, oh yeah, that's what it
No.
was. So earlier you had said that you cannot think yourself out of a feeling problem. And so in
Yes.
order for you to think or in order for you to help yourself out of a feeling problem, you would recommend meditation because that's kind of where the story went into.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
It will
gotcha.
help both, help physically and emotionally. But it'll help emotionally more.
Yes, I agree with
Because
you. I agree 100%.
it's a language that is difficult to connect with physically. In fact, I think it's impossible to connect emotionally physically. That's just my personal view, though. And you will understand the wrong word. Understand the thinking word. You'll become more aware of how you're feeling and why you're feeling how you're feeling and what to do about it when you meditate, because the answers are there. They're there. They're just going to open up the book and find them. And open up the book by just opening up your heart when you meditate, primarily to yourself. I open up your own heart, and you will understand how you're feeling. Or you will not understand. You will know how you're feeling is a better word. You'll know how you're feeling, and you'll become more aware of how what you might want to do about that.
I love
The,
that,
the
Peter.
guidance will be there. The guides, and that this happened. It's happened with Bell. It's happened with me, and it's happened with literally hundreds of people I've spoken to in these virtual workshop environments. It's happens again and again and again. Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have connected with you, Peter. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom light, all of your energy, and your incredible story with the Little Less Fear podcast. I wish you, your daughter, and all your loved ones an incredible new year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lito.